It's always interesting when you see a film in your younger years, but you don't have quite the life experience to appreciate it or maybe even understand it. But then years go by, you hopefully mature, and you see the same film again with more experienced eyes, and it comes more into focus for you. And that's the topic for today's episode. This is the Kazdoy Closet. I'm Kazdoy. That's my closet, full of all the stuff that I love. And today, a film that, judging by its title back in 1970, I thought was a horror film. And now that I've watched it again, maybe it is. Let's check it out. Today's film is Diary of a Mad Housewife from 1970, 96 minutes long, in color. This is about an affluent housewife living with an obnoxious, abusive husband and their two daughters, and she decides to have an affair. It was directed by Frank Perry, who also directed several films I've seen, including David and Lisa, The Swimmer, which is right there behind me, which I need to really look at again, and Mommy Dearest, which I did a previous episode on if you want to check that out. This is probably his best film, I would say. The screenplay was by his wife at the time, Eleanor Perry. They collaborated quite often on their films. And this is possibly semi-autobiographical as far as she's concerned. Let's just put it this way. A year after the film was completed, they got a divorce. The main character, Tina, is played by Carrie Snodgress. This is really her first feature film. She died at a very young age, 58. I think it was a liver ailment. And she was nominated for an Oscar for Best Actress for this. She won 2 Golden Globes for this film, Best Actress and I believe Best Newcomer. She actually left the film business for several years and lived with the musician Neil Young. Now, many of you probably know the story, but Neil Young had an album called Harvest, and there was a song called A Man Needs a Maid, in the song he explains how he saw a film and he fell in love with the actress in the film, and he understood the role she was playing, and that film was this, and that actress was Carrie Snodgress. They lived together for several years, never got married, and they had a son together who unfortunately had cerebral palsy, and so she left the business, I'm assuming partly to take care of her son. And then later on, she, after her relationship ended, she did several films, but nothing reached really the heights of this film for Carrie Snodgress. Her husband, Jonathan, is played by Richard Benjamin. Richard Benjamin I first saw back in the late 60s. He was in a sitcom with his then wife. I don't know if they're still married or not, but she was an actress also, Paula Prentice. And the sitcom was called He and She. I used to watch that. And then he made his first feature film was Goodbye Columbus, which I also liked. And he was also in Catch-22, which I think is a neglected film. And I did an episode on that film, which barely anybody watched. But if you want to check that out, you can. And he made several other films, Sunshine Boys, many other films. But this is really almost a comic performance by him. It's a wonderful performance by Richard Benjamin and pretty unforgettable. The guy she has an affair with is played by, his name's George, is played by Frank Langella, who I'm really most familiar with his work in the series The Americans, but he has over 100 film credits in his filmography. And as far as music goes, there's no music in the film. There's a musical act, though. They go to a party. They go to several parties because that's what they're supposed to be doing. And at this party in 1970 is the Alice Cooper Band, but they're basically just kind of thrashing around and doing guitar feedback and throwing pillow feathers all over the place. It's kind of ridiculous. The best scenes in the film, really, and there's several of them, are between Richard Benjamin and Carrie Snodgress. I mean, from the very beginning of the film, he is in her face. He's so abusive, not physically, but psychologically and verbally. He's constantly criticizing her about everything, from the fact that she's sleeping too late, why she's so tired, she looks too skinny, her hair's not right, she's not doing enough, she's not saying the right things. It's really kind of cringy and just overwhelming. And then he even starts being sarcastic to her in front of their two little daughters, and then the daughters start imitating him and treating her the same way. And he basically just orders her around like a servant. He's a Harvard-educated lawyer in the film, and they're living on the Upper East Side of New York City, very affluent area, right across from Central Park. But he's totally consumed with status, with appearances, with brand names. It's different apparently from the novel, because the novel begins, the two of them have just met. They're in college, they're young, they're more idealistic, less materialistic, let's say, more creative as far as what their pursuits are. But in the film, it just starts, they've already been established in a marriage for X number of years. They got two daughters as well. But even other people in the film, like the elevator operator and one of the waiters, they look at Richard Benjamin like, what a jerk he is. He's so arrogant and obnoxious. So Carrie Snodgress meets Frank Langella at a party, and he's actually he looks a little bit different from everybody else there. He's got longer hair, and he seems a little more rebellious anyways, he's actually looking for another woman at this party, and he uses the C word to describe this woman, and I had never heard the C word in 1970, that's for sure. So I was kind of surprised at that. But then he basically sexually assaults her, almost, Carrie Snodgress, at this party by leaning up against her, face to face, and he's never even met her before. But, she ends up having an affair with him, and we have to ask why, and I think there's several possible reasons. It could just be she's simply attracted to him. It could be that her husband's too self-involved. She likes the attention. He's not into, the Frank Langella character is not into the status and the rules of society like Richard Benjamin's character is. And then you also have, the whole 60s and 70s sexual revolution going on, where people were a little more free and experimenting more. And Frank Langella says from the very beginning, this is just sex, no attachments at all. But it turns out that he's got a lot of the same, he's a narcissist, basically, just like her husband is. Carrie Snodgrass is very sympathetic in this film. You're really on her side from the very beginning. But you also are asking, what exactly does she want? And that's kind of an interesting part of the film. She does get to just about the tipping point at one moment in the film near the end, where Richard Benjamin basically says that she's holding him back, and that she's also setting a bad example for their two kids. And she kind of explodes at that, understandably. Now, you could say that she's sort of stuck in a transition from the expected roles of women, especially housewives from the 50s and 60s, and then moving into 1970, where this film takes place, where you're supposed to be a little more liberated, and more women are working at the time and not housewives. So she's kind of stuck in that transitional period there. And she's an educated woman in this film, very well educated, but she's bored because she's not using an education. She's just doing menial tasks. The most creative decision she has to make is her husband allows her to pick out which tie he should wear for certain events. So she seems rather depressed, especially at the beginning. But, somebody made the point that depression wasn't really talked about at this point in time. And that's why in the 50s and 60s you had pills. Remember the Rolling Stones song, Mother's Little Helper? Well, those are the euphemism for the pills they would give women who were depressed, even though they didn't use that word, and they were basically amphetamines. They were uppers to get her up. So my rating for Diary of a Mad Housewife is 4.5 wine glasses out of 5. Why wine glasses? Richard Benjamin character, one of the things he's obsessed with is just having the right wine and the right year, and he thinks he knows the best wine for every occasion, as is part of his weirdness. And so at the beginning of this, I said that when I first saw this title, when I was 15 years old or so, I thought, oh, Mad Housewife, she must be crazy. This must be a horror film. And in a way, it kind of is, because she's living through kind of even though she's well off, she's in a bad situation, and I won't give away the ending, but Let's just say she's in a bad situation. And let me say this also, the woman who wrote the novel this film is based on committed suicide 8 years after this film was made. So get from that what you will, right? So what's on this disc? This is an indicator disc. It is region B. Picture quality, not that great. It's not real sharp. So I guess they worked with what they could. When you see the trailer, that looks awful. I mean, it's almost unwatchable. It's so blurry and scratches and all that stuff. So they must have cleaned this up quite a bit, but you're not going to get a pristine, super sharp picture out of this one. There's a booklet that comes with it. That's very good. It's about 40 pages long. There's the director there. There's Benjamin and Snodgrass there. And it's very well done. That has information about the, there's an interview with the director, information about the novelist, Sue Kaufman. There she is there. And then some background about Carrie Snodgrass as well. I do want to mention that that booklet comes with the limited edition for you collectors out there. So I don't know if that's available or not. I got this, I think, about a year ago. So it might still be available. So just so you know, they don't all have the booklet. There are a few extras. There is a Richard Benjamin interview, a recent interview. It's about 5 minutes long, really not long enough to get into anything expansive. There is a 30-minute video essay with a film editor. That's very good. And there are 2 audio commentaries, which I did not listen to. So, where can you see Diary of a Mad Housewife? I don't see it streaming anywhere right now. You might be able to find it at your library. You might be able to rent it somewhere. Kino does also make an edition of this. I don't know what extras are on it, but it could be on sale right now. This is April 17th, 2023. They're having a Kino sale right now. You might be able to pick it up for $10, but again, I don't know what extras are on there. So feel free to leave a comment or suggestion down below. I want to thank the following people who've left comments since our last episode: Sam, Tina, Michael, RMIHAIO. I'm not sure what that is, but I thank you all for leaving comments, taking the time. Really appreciate that. And feel free to leave a thumbs up. Don't leave a thumbs down. Subscribe would be great. Share this with your friends and neighbors. We're working towards our next goal of 475 subscribers, so please join us. You could also check us out on the Letterboxd app under the Kazdoy Closet. There's a link listed in the show notes down below, and that's where I leave brief written reviews of other things we're watching. I just watched Cocaine Bear and left a brief review of that one if you want to check it out. Otherwise, hope you liked this episode. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. See you next time.